This is Evelyn Lopez. Welcome to Sustainability in Your Ear, the Earth911.com podcast for the week of October 15, 2018. We are coming to you recorded at the marvelous Moonyard Recording Studio in Tacoma, Washington, although only Doug is in the studio today. This week, we're going to talk about recent articles and reports on climate change, big news, and we want to focus on plants. We will also be answering your Earthling questions. So who do we have with us today? Mitch Ratcliffe, our Earth911 publisher. Mitch, where are you today?
Well, I'm working from home and, of course, in beautiful Lakewood, Washington, the rainy part of the world.
Very good. We also have our Earth911 writer, Sarah Lozanova. Sarah, where are you today?
Hi, I'm in beautiful Mid-Coast, Maine.
Lovely. And what kind of weather are you having in Maine today?
It's sunny and warm, surprisingly.
Nice.
Is that unusual, or is that part of the climate change?
Well, I wouldn't quite call it climate change per se. We've had a lot of cold, rainy weather lately, so we have a little break in the clouds today.
Good.
That's nice. Well, and I'm coming to you from a lovely bed and breakfast in Napa, California. It's the Candlelight Inn, and it's very, very beautiful. And I'm here for a couple of days of vacation with my husband, and it is very lovely outside. It's sunny. It'll probably hit about 80 degrees today, and I think I'm going to do a little bit of work poolside this afternoon.
Well, that is the best time of the year to be in Napa.
Absolutely. It's probably hot as Hades during the summertime, but it's lovely right now.
Yeah, so the fall is the very best. And you know, what I've been seeing, we were talking about this before we went on air, is that it seems like both spring and fall in the Northwest, at least, arrived 2 weeks early. And so we are starting to see some of the impacts of the half degree of temperature increase that we've seen.
Yeah. So that is a good stepping off point, Mitch. Before we get into our regular format, I thought we'd briefly talk about the big story this week. I know it was in the New York Times and the LA Times, and it's this new UN report on climate change. So, frankly, it's not good news. It looks like we will start seeing the very concerning impacts of climate change a whole lot sooner than we expected.
Well, and I think, it's so the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change at the UN released this report on Monday, although the news broke on Sunday evening, saying essentially we have 12 years, is the way that's been summarized, 12 years to respond to the climate changes that we're facing. Otherwise, we get to a irretrievable 2 degrees centigrade increase in temperature, and that will cause massive changes, people having to migrate from coasts, the failure of crops, desertification expands, so many terrible outcomes. But the other element of the report, and hopefully it'll have this effect everywhere but the White House, because the White House is impervious to intellectual impacts, is to really spur people to make this change. And there are plenty of businesses and plenty of governments around the world that are already seriously trying to deal with this. And even the United States has lowered its carbon emissions. But we have to go further. And that was the underscored point of the report. We have to move.
The report, it's just, it's very concerning. You know, I have it up in front of me, the New York Times article, and it says that the atmosphere, if things continue as they have been, the atmosphere will warm up by as much as 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit or 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels by 2040. I mean, and it says, you know, what that means is inundating coastlines and intensifying droughts and increasing poverty. And I'll tell you, when I look at that, I just think 2040. I mean, that is just really soon. And it makes me kind of feel a little bit like, boy, I mean, is there anything I can do?
Yes, there is. Every one of us can do things. We can change our diets. We can recycle so that we're using less power to make new stuff. We can stop extracting things from the earth. Mm-hmm. We can change the way we use energy. Sarah, for instance, has spent the last several years creating a genuinely zero emission or near zero emission home, for instance. I think there's plenty of things that we can do.
Yeah.
And we have to spend our money with an eye towards whether or not the product or service that we buy is making the environment better, not simply whether or not it's neutral or trying to get better. We really need to focus on it has to be regenerative, not simply extractive.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think too, for me, my background is politics and the law. And for me, I think the importance is really talking about this and talking about strategies and things that can be done, because that will help both our lawmakers and our, social leaders come up with plans that we can then implement. Unless people believe first that this is going to happen, it's real, and secondly, that there's something that can be done to stop it. That kind of information piece is really critical into getting people mobilized into action to take steps to make changes.
Well, we have a survey coming up about whether or not people believe we can make this change. I'm going to be interested to see what that is, what the response is from people. Yeah. Sarah, what do you think? I mean, particularly from the perspective of your long investment in sustainability as an individual and a family, how do you see that report?
I think we're really going to need to get all hands on deck to make this shift possible. And I think it would need to happen on a lot of levels, like on a corporate level, on a governmental level, on an individual level, communities. So I think reports like this are good at highlighting the urgency of the issues. And I like a lot of the things that you pointed out, Mitch, because there's a lot of things that we can all do as individuals that collectively make an effort. But I think we really need to attack this issue from a lot of angles.
Yeah, and I think the angles here in the States are, we have to go to state and local governments to push this through at this point, because the White House, the Trump administration, has sided with coal. And one of the things that, there's a related story that came out last week. It was an EPA environmental impact statement. It was a 500-page report in which the EPA said casually, well, the temperature is going to rise 7 degrees, and there's nothing we can do about it. So let's just try to make the best, which was a stunning reversal of the position that the Trump administration has taken, that climate change is human caused. It's not winning in any sense. It was a declaration of surrender. And we need to recognize as Americans that if that leadership doesn't exist, we need to exercise the leadership by going to the mayors, city council, the state legislature, the governors of our states, and demand that they take this seriously, because they answer to us. It's not the other way around.
Right. We are the government. Well, we have it in us to do this. So, when this country and I'm thinking England, my family that was in New Zealand, in the 1930s, 1940s, mobilized all the resources. I mean, all the resources. Kids were turning in their tin toys. Women went without their stockings. All the resources to fight the scourge of the time. The huge worry about World War II. We have it in us to mobilize and to do this. We have it in us to, it was Churchill's famous speech of, we will fight them in the air, we will fight them on the ground, never give up. We can do this.
We will pick up the trash in the streets. We will pick up the trash in the subways.
We will never give up. We will build solar.
And we will. I genuinely believe we can. Reports like this underscore the importance. The problem is that because they come and go and there's not a consistent communication around what can be done from something like this, which hopefully Earth911 is helping to provide. That's also a function of the press's fleeting attention.
Yes.
And they need to be very focused on this too. And I think Bloomberg, for instance, the Washington Post, is another, are really starting to cover this as a serious, widespread issue rather than a specialized problem. And we have to get past the idea that we're doing this just for the good of things. It's not a feel-good project. It's a survival project. Well, let's talk about one way people can make a difference, and that's by recycling. We did this survey this week, and the survey was, how confident are you in your recycling knowledge? Only 34% of our readers said that they were very confident, but 53% said they were somewhat confident. So we're talking about 87% of people feel as though they can make an intelligent recycling decision. But of course, there's always new information you need to take into account as new materials come out, all sorts of things change about products from generation to generation. That's where we can spend a lot of our social capital is in sharing the information and investing in the time to clarify what are complex problems and give people simple actions that they can take. And so that's why we have started to introduce more shopping guides and other things on Earth911. It's really about using your consumer dollar to send a message every time you spend that you don't want waste.
I think that's really important. When I look at these survey responses, and this is so 34% say I'm very confident, 53% I'm somewhat confident, and then we have 11% saying I'm often unconfident and 2% saying I'm very unconfident. But that big number, that 53%, if you can move them into very confident, then they share the information. Yep. And that makes a big change.
Well, and I see the Earthling community that we have is like computer enthusiasts 30 years ago. They're sustainability enthusiasts. They're taking what are well-established processes inside some businesses and starting to extend them into the rest of their life. The trick with the 53% of people who are somewhat confident is that they are also what we call aspirational recyclers. They'll throw everything into the recycling bin, which is a problem. And so it's knowing what goes into which bin, how to process it, or to recognize that it doesn't go in the bin at all. We will have an interview coming up in a few days on recycling phones. And this is something that you don't want to put that phone into your curbside if, in fact, you ever were to do that, because it's unsafe for the recycling worker who might have it explode on them in the machinery, but it's also a waste of the material in the phone not to have it recycled. And so you have to make a good decision. Otherwise, you're literally throwing gold, platinum, and other raw materials that are going to have to be extracted from a mine somewhere into the trash. And that's ridiculous at this stage in our society.
Good. Well, we'll look forward to that. We have another quiz up or a survey up right now that is, the question is, have your local recycling rules changed this year? And we don't have results yet, so there's still time for people to weigh in on that, and we will talk about those results next time.
Yeah, and that's an area where we know there are a lot of changes going on because we see them reported by our users. They send us notes saying that the information in our databases needs to be changed because somebody made a decision in a municipal program, and we encourage everybody to let us know about those things so we can share the information.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting. Well, and we wanted to mention we've got 3 interviews up right now, recent interviews up on the Earth911.com website. The first with Jekka Glassman, General Manager of SodaStream. The second with Steve Bush, the CEO of Reclaim, which is an Atlanta-based recycler. And the third with Magnus Jern, the chief water drinker at the London-based Tapwater. So, Mitch, you've done these interviews. What can you tell us about them? What should we be listening for?
Well, both Tapwater and SodaStream talked about the use of replaceable plastic or reusable plastic over single use. And they emphasize how many plastic bottles and cans you can reduce each year by using either their SodaStream fizzy water maker or the Tapwater water faucet. And I'm particularly impressed with the Tapwater water faucet because it is actually a completely decompostable filter. If you've ever done a Brita filter change, you know there's a lot of plastic there, and that doesn't break down in a landfill. The Tapwater filter breaks down in a landfill. It'll even break down in your own yard composting. It takes a little while longer. And they designed the entire filter to be as biodegradable as possible. So the only things that aren't biodegradable on it are part of the main body and the metal screw that screws it onto the faucet. So they're really thinking about how to take the unrecyclable elements out of the design, and I'm looking forward to seeing great things from them. The Reclaim interview was really interesting. Steve Bush founded Reclaim about 5 or 8 years ago. To focus on capturing CFCs when you're recycling refrigerators and air conditioning units. And a lot of people don't know that there are 5 or 6 pounds of CFCs, not just in the coils, but in the foam that insulates a refrigerator, in almost all pre-2005 appliances. So Reclaim has a sealed system that crushes and lets the gas out, captures it, and isolates it and neutralizes it so that it can be released into the environment in a non-toxic way. So really important, and I love the fact that his mission is that no refrigerator should reach a landfill. It's a great interview.
Yeah, I thought that was really good. I thought it was very insightful, too, that he sort of commented that, so many people have an old refrigerator that they just stash in the garage or the basement to hold, maybe some extra milk or some sodas and things like that, and you don't even think about it. But there's actually a lot of old technology sitting around in people's houses. So it's nice that there's an option for getting rid of it properly.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about our Earth911 stories. Well, I thought this week we'd talk about plants. And especially with fall here, we've got leaves falling, we've got gardens that need to be put to bed. And Sarah, I thought you could talk about a couple of those stories.
Yeah, now is a great time to give kind of a second thought to your garden. It's a time that a lot of people are actually putting their gardens to bed. And so there's a few tips that we wanted to make readers aware of. One is that some of the plants in your garden might be able to endure some colder temperatures, and you might be able to keep them going for a while. Like kale is a great plant to keep going. If you have some kale in your yard, depending on your climate, you can often keep kale going through a few frosts without even putting any protection on it. Arugula can often do well in cold temperatures as well. And then another tip that many gardeners like is to try to cover some of their crops to extend the life of their garden. So something like putting on a hoop structure, for example, can protect some of your plants against cold temperatures and high winds. So you might be able to get a few extra tomatoes out of your garden in the fall, or peppers, or some of those plants that aren't so cold hardy.
Mm-hmm.
There's some good book recommendations in there as well. The recommendation of Nikki Jabour's Year-Round Vegetable Gardener was a good read. I took a look at it.
That's great.
Well, what about, so I've been thinking of putting together in my yard an extra pot of things that actually grow over the winter, and I'm hoping that I can do like kale and maybe some Brussels sprouts, but I don't know if I can do more than that.
Yeah, arugula is another one that can be pretty cold hardy. Spinach as well, but I've definitely had the best luck with kale. Really? Even though I'm up in Maine, I've had kale into the middle of pretty much until it gets completely buried in snow and I can no longer find the plant.
Wow. And so if you wanted to extend it even longer, could you like cover it with some straw or something like that?
Yeah, or sometimes buckets. I've done that. Taken buckets out and put them over plants when I thought we would be getting below freezing temperatures. Some people I've seen take blankets or sheets as well. Like it's not necessarily important if you're just trying to extend the growing season by a week or two to buy materials. You might even have some materials that you can use. Another thing to keep in mind too when you're clearing out the garden is wildlife, creating wildlife habitat. Like a lot of people tend to just clear everything out of a bed. And that's not necessarily the best for your soil and also for bugs and birds and other wildlife. So one of the things that I tend to do, I do clear out the vegetable garden, but a lot of the perennials I'll leave intact in my garden. And I really notice a difference, especially with birds. I'll see the birds, in late winter and early spring when there's very little other food out there. They'll be munching away at some of the seeds on my perennials. So that's another good tip, is just to really consider what needs to leave. Definitely any diseased plant material, you want to get that out. And generally people recommend clearing out vegetable patches. But some of the some of the wildflowers or perennial flowers, those oftentimes can be left.
Yeah, I definitely do that. I have wildflowers that I grow as much as year round as I can. And I replant a couple of times during the year so that it continues to thrive.
And I think sometimes different people have different aesthetic preferences. And I really like the look of even dead wildflowers, I think are beautiful. But different people have different preferences. So some people might think that looks untidy. But definitely the wildlife that it attracts as well, I find very appealing.
I know we had a story also about taking care of, all of the leaves that fall in the garden. And were there any tips or things that we can incorporate from that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I would highly recommend trying to keep leaves out of a landfill at all costs. And so I actually use leaves. I don't have a lot of trees in my yard, so I actually go to a cemetery that has a leaf compost pile, and I bring leaves into my garden to put them on the beds. But it's a great way to create more organic matter in your garden and also help enrich the soils, help improve your soil's ability to retain water, and then also kind of protect the soil from soil erosion and freezing temperatures, just to use them like mulch around your plant beds. That's a great use for them. You can also put leaves in your home compost pile, and this can be a good way to add brown material. And another option is just curbside yard waste. A lot of communities will come by and bring these leaves to large-scale composting facilities. So that would, on the sustainability spectrum, I think that's, more in the middle, and certainly putting them in the garbage and having them end up in a landfill would be the lowest.
Yeah. The mulching option is a really good one, particularly for somebody as lazy about it as me, because all you really need to do is mow the leaves over. And I do that both in my yard and in the garden. And it produces a nice mulch every year. There's a lot of assumption that you have to rake all these things up, bag them up, and send them out. That is literally the old-fashioned way to do this. You can keep your leaves in your lawn.
And that can be a lot more work and not necessarily have any benefit. If anything, it's sort of sending away a lot of your resources. Another tip is you can take piles of sticks and kind of build them up, maybe kind of at the back of the garden or something, and that can create wildlife habitat as well, like shelter for little critters.
That's a good idea. So we have a maple tree in the backyard with small leaves, thank goodness, but it pretty much blankets everything. If I do just tend to rake it up and put it into yard waste. But if I want to use it as a mulch for my other parts of my garden in the beds, should I try to do anything to break the leaves down, or do I just pile them up on the garden?
Mitch, did you say that you mow them first and that breaks them up and then you rake them? Is that how you do it?
I kind of rake them to where I want them to be, but I mow my lawn with the leaves on it.
Yeah.
And so that would make it probably the size of grass clippings almost?
Yeah. And it settles nicely into, particularly on my lawn, to fill in areas that didn't grow well over the summer too.
Okay.
And I have neighbors that are avid gardeners that use leaf mulch in their garden throughout the year as a way to suppress weeds and also to contain moisture. So it can be a great way to help reduce the amount that you need to irrigate your garden too in the summertime,
right? Because
it helps keep that moisture locked into the soil.
Well, Mitch, we had a story on napkins and tissues made from sugarcane rather than trees. You want to tell us about that one? Yeah,
sure. And this is part of a wide-ranging move by companies to start to provide sustainable products. In fact, just last week, Seventh Generation introduced the first completely recycled detergent container that they make. And they introduced it in a form where you get a very concentrated laundry detergent, so that you don't have to buy a 100-ounce bottle. You can buy one that anybody can lift. But that's just, that efficiency is being built into all sorts of the products that we use around the house. Now, toilet paper is an essential thing, and we should learn to use less of it. And it's questionable whether we need paper napkins or paper towels all the time, and we should be judicious about it. But now you don't necessarily have to have a tree cut down to have those products in your house. And so there are a couple of companies that we covered in this article. Emerald brand just introduced a whole line of eco-friendly disposables and cleaning supplies that are made from bagasse, which is a leftover residue, I'm not sure how to say it, from sugarcane juicing. So it's the fibers of the sugarcane. They break that down and use that to make their paper products. We've also recently covered a couple of other companies. True Green Enterprises is another company. We did some interviews with Terry Lehman, their founder, a couple of months ago. And they're introducing not only compostable recycled paper products, but bamboo straws to get rid of the plastic straw problem. So we really urge folks to go out and look at these brands, 7th Generation, Emerald Brands, and True Green Enterprises when they're looking for really sustainable household products. So a lot of progress. It's just a matter of finding these things.
I think it's definitely worth looking for. And I am trying to transition back into using cloth handkerchiefs and napkins. But every now and again, especially if you've got a really bad cold, paper products do make life a lot easier. So if I can find, good quality paper products that are made from more sustainable materials, I'm all for it. And I think that we should definitely decide that material is pronounced bagasse.
Is it? Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if it is, but I think calling it bagasse is not good.
We'll cut that right out.
Or not. People might want to know how to pronounce it.
You might want to know how poorly my French works.
I don't know. I don't know if it's bagasse, but I think that may be the better choice. All right, the last story that I wanted to touch on today is one that we have up now, and it's about having exotic natives, particularly hardy orchids, growing in your yard. And I thought this was interesting because what I thought was, if you are someplace where winter becomes rather bleak, it's nice to have a little green project in your house that you can start thinking of for spring. And so this article talks about orchids that are available that will grow in your yard. Now, a special caveat, do not go out into the woods and find beautiful lady slipper orchids and dig them up. First, in most places that is illegal. Many orchids are endangered. And secondly, those orchids live in a unique ecosystem where they are reliant upon the particular soil, fungi that may be in the soil, and they will not do well in your home garden. Instead, there are a couple of businesses that are noted in the article. One is the North American Orchid Conservation Center that has information on more than 200 orchid species. And another excellent website is Botany Boy, which maintains a list of orchid suppliers. And Spangle Creek Labs is another orchid grower. Look to those, do some online research, and find out which orchids will grow in your area, and then maybe start them, baby them over the winter inside, and then transplant them in the spring to your garden and see if you can get some orchids to grow. I would love to do this. I have a plant-eating cat, so I may or may not be able to achieve it, but I am very interested.
The plant-eating cat really threw me at the end there.
You were not expecting that, were you?
No. So I love orchids, and it would be really great to be able to grow some in my own yard. But I've always thought of them primarily as an indoor plant, like you were saying, and it's a fun plant to grow. So, except for this whole problem with planting cats, I think it sounds like a great idea.
I think you should give it a try. The little the lady slippers are very beautiful, and unusual looking, and so that would be kind of fun to get some of those, especially if you've got a shady corner. And in Western Washington, usually our yards are not lacking in shady corners.
Mine's all shady corners.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, so those are the stories we had to focus on, but any other issues you want to bring up before we move on to Earthling Questions?
We're getting more stories about how to make these kinds of choices every week, and we hope people will continue to tune in to the site and to the podcast to learn about them. But we've been taking a kind of focus approach with each of the episodes, and I think this has really been interesting. Getting ready for the winter, getting ready for next year's planting. If there are ideas that folks out there would like us to address, please send a suggestion at feedback@earth911.com, and we'd be happy to put together a show about those topics. So, Evelyn, great job curating. Let's see if we can get some folks to make some suggestions about other topics we can talk about.
That would be fantastic.
Well, let's turn to Earthling Questions then.
Okay, then. Well, our first question is from Joseph, and on Facebook, Joseph asked, how do you safely dispose of mercury?
Well, Joseph's question is very general, and I believe he's actually talking about mercury, the material, rather than things that contain mercury. And there's a distinction there. A lot of people are familiar with the mercury in thermometers, for instance, and how it balls up if you break it. And that is an extremely toxic substance. Unfortunately, people used it in commercial productions of everything from gold to top hats at various times and have been literally driven mad by contact with it on an ongoing basis. So you want to be very careful with mercury, and you want to be aware of the things that have mercury in them, like CFL light bulbs, some button batteries, and other kinds of products that you wouldn't think had mercury, and it also need to be handled by a household hazardous waste facility. So this is not something you can toss in your curbside or put in a jar and think that it's going to be okay. You do need to take it down to a household hazardous waste location and have it and identify it for somebody so that mercury doesn't get loose into the environment.
Yeah. And we have on our Earth911 website, in our recycling guide, a whole how-to of how to recycle items containing mercury. And it's very helpful information. But yeah, the bottom line is mercury is highly toxic, highly hazardous, and needs to be disposed of properly in a hazardous waste facility.
Yeah, don't touch it if you break a thermometer, for instance. So use some form of pickup tool, paper, and brush it with paper. Don't touch it with your hands because it does get into the folds on your fingers.
Terrible. Our next question is very interesting. Jeff in Denver asked, are dentures recyclable? Dentures?
Well, so this is a tough one. I mean, the materials in a denture are theoretically recyclable, but the denture itself is a highly personalized product that was designed for somebody's mouth. And so it's very hard to reuse these. And we looked all over the web for recycling programs. We don't have any denture recycling programs that we found in our database in the United States, but we did find one through a site called Synonym in Japan. And so Japan is the place you can send your dentures for recycling. The Japan Dentures Recycling Association is at 350-8799 Kawagoe Post Office, Stop, Japan. And that is a program that will reconfigure the denture for somebody else's use. They'll get in there with a drill and try to make it work for somebody else. I can't imagine that that's a huge business, and here's the reason why. Dentists make money from the adjustments. What we really probably need to do is encourage our dentists to recycle the materials when we bring in these old dentures. They're positioned, talking to the sources of these materials, to do so. In a way that most of us are not.
That's true. Yeah, this is something. There's probably all kinds of things that you use in your body that we don't really think about. What happens to them once they are no longer needed. The dentures definitely are part of that. You had some good information too on how to get these used items ready to be sent in for recycling, and that was boil them. Pour boiling water over the dentures and let them sit until the water cools down, because they need to be very carefully cleaned before you can really send them on to someone else for their use. The other thing I've seen, and this is kind of a weird thing, and I certainly can't handle, all the dentures in the world, but different artists may use them in in their pieces too. So there may be other creative reuse opportunities out there for your thoroughly disinfected dentures.
Well, so we should probably encourage people to take them into craft stores after boiling. And
Really?
There could be a bowl of dentures that you could choose from when doing your next art project.
You know, I think that would actually be very popular.
I think people would use
stores, that I've gone to.
Absolutely.
All right, then. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode.
Including bad French and all sorts of other things.
Bad French and disinfected dentures.
There you go.
You get everything here. So as Mitch said, if you have suggestions for other topics or if you have any thoughts at all, please send those to us. You can email us by sending your email to feedback@earth911.com. And you can find us regularly on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and of course at the earth911.com website. See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.